Have you ever wondered how a person's intimate preferences can reflect deep aspects of their personality and emotional life? Sometimes, it is in these choices that we discover more about who we really are and what we value in our relationships. Let me share a story that may offer a new perspective on how these preferences can influence our lives. In the historic city of Charleston, South Carolina, where elegant mansions and blooming gardens are framed by cobblestone streets and the charm of the South is felt at every corner, there lived a lady named Vivian. At 84 years old, Vivian was a central figure in the community. Her silver hair shimmered in the sunlight, and her blue eyes held the wisdom accumulated over decades of experiences. Her Victorian home, situated on a quiet street surrounded by century-old oaks, was a gathering place for friends and family seeking comfort and advice. Vivian was known for her stories, which always came with a life lesson. She spent her days tending to the rose garden that surrounded her house, a space she cared for with as much love as the people in her life. The flowers of various colors and fragrances were a living representation of Vivian herself, a woman who had cultivated strong and deep relationships over the years. On a sunny spring afternoon, as the scent of the flowers mingled with the gentle breeze from the Atlantic, a young woman named Emily came to visit Vivian. Emily, a woman in her 30s, was seeking answers to questions that had been troubling her. She had heard comments about intimate preferences that left her confused and somewhat worried about what these preferences could mean for her and her relationships. "Mrs. Vivian," Emily began, her voice filled with hesitation and uncertainty, "I've been thinking a lot about what people say regarding intimate preferences. I heard that these preferences can reveal something profound about who we are. What do you think about that?" Vivian, with the calm and understanding of someone who had faced many challenges in life, smiled gently at Emily and invited her to sit with her on the porch. The sun filtered through the trees, casting soft shadows on the wooden floor, creating a warm and tranquil atmosphere. "My dear," said Vivian, her voice soft and comforting, "life is full of choices, and each of them can teach us something about ourselves. Sometimes, the preferences we have in intimacy can reveal important aspects of our personality and what we truly value in a relationship. Let me tell you a story that might help you understand this better." As the leaves swayed gently in the breeze, Vivian began her story. "Many years ago, I met a woman named Margaret. Margaret was a fascinating person, full of life and with a strong and determined personality. She had a unique way of seeing the world, and her choices in life were always guided by the desire to live authentically, without worrying about what others thought." Emily listened attentively, her eyes fixed on Vivian's serene figure as she continued. "Margaret always believed that true intimacy went beyond the physical. For her, intimacy was a way to connect deeply with someone, to share not just the body but also the mind and soul. And one of the ways she expressed this connection was through her intimate preferences, which often challenged conventional norms. Margaret believed that her preferences were an expression of her freedom and self-confidence. She saw these choices as a way to assert her autonomy, to show that she was in control of her own life and her own decisions. For Margaret, these choices were not just about physical pleasure, but about the freedom to be who she really was, without fear of judgment, explained Vivian. Once, Margaret was in a relationship with a man named Thomas. Thomas was a kind and caring man, but he had his own insecurities and prejudices about what was considered normal in a relationship. Thomas loved Margaret deeply, but he couldn't understand her preferences. He feared that they meant something negative about their relationship, something he couldn't put into words. Margaret, noticing Thomas's internal struggle, decided to have an honest conversation with him. On a quiet night, while walking along the beach, with the sound of the waves gently crashing in the background, she stopped and looked into his eyes. "Thomas," she said, her voice firm yet filled with tenderness, I know you have doubts about what our preferences mean, but I want you to understand that they do not define our love or our connection. They are just a part of who I am, and a way to express my trust in us." Thomas, moved by Margaret's sincerity, began to understand that her preferences were not a reflection of something negative, but rather an expression of her authenticity and her willingness to share everything with him, without reservations. It was at that moment that Thomas realized that true love is about fully accepting the other, with all their nuances and particularities. Vivian continued. In the days that followed, Thomas reflected on the conversation with Margaret. He began to realize that his own insecurities were rooted in outdated ideas and prejudices he had internalized over the years. These ideas, often reinforced by societal expectations, were preventing him from seeing the true beauty of the relationship he had with Margaret. Thomas understood that, to be a truly loving and supportive partner, he would need to challenge these beliefs and open himself to a deeper understanding of who Margaret really was. Margaret and Thomas started working together to strengthen their relationship. They committed to communicating openly and honestly about their needs, desires, and fears. This process was not easy, but by allowing themselves to be vulnerable with each other, they discovered that they were building an even stronger bond based on mutual respect and understanding. Margaret, with her determined nature, continued to assert her identity and preferences, never allowing the judgments of others or Thomas's insecurities to make her question who she was. She knew that her worth did not lie in conforming to others' expectations, but in being true to herself and to those she loved. Margaret and Thomas learned that the preferences we have in intimacy can actually be a bridge to a deeper connection, a way to show the other that we trust them completely, without fears or barriers, Vivian explained. Over time, Thomas not only accepted Margaret's preferences but came to value them as an essential part of what made their relationship unique and special. He began to see that true intimacy goes beyond the physical, involving an emotional and spiritual connection that is strengthened when both partners are open and honest about who they are and what they desire. Vivian looked at Emily, her eyes shining with wisdom. "My dear, the lesson that Margaret and Thomas learned is that our preferences do not define us, but they are an important part of who we are. When we embrace and share them with someone who loves us, they can become a powerful way to strengthen the relationship, to build something that goes beyond the physical and touches the emotional and spiritual." Emily, absorbing every word, felt a new understanding grow within her. "So, Mrs. Vivian," she said, her voice more assertive, "these preferences can be a way to express who we really are and to build a relationship based on trust and mutual acceptance?" Vivian smiled, a smile full of love and compassion. "Exactly, my dear. When we allow ourselves to be authentic in our relationships, when we share our true preferences and desires, we are showing the other person that we trust them completely, that we are willing to be vulnerable because we know we will be accepted as we are. This is what truly strengthens a relationship." In the months that followed, Emily put into practice what she had learned from Vivian. She began to feel more confident in expressing her preferences and communicating her desires with her partner. By doing so, she discovered that her relationship was becoming deeper and more meaningful. She and her partner began to explore new forms of intimacy together, always with mutual respect and understanding. Emily also started to share her experience with her friends, helping them understand that true strength in a relationship comes from acceptance and mutual respect. She encouraged other women to be authentic and not to feel ashamed of their preferences. As a result, Emily became a respected voice within her social circle, someone the other women sought for advice and guidance. Vivian, watching Emily flourish in her newfound understanding, felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She knew that Margaret's story had planted a seed of self-confidence in Emily, a seed that would continue to grow and influence not only her life but also the lives of those around her. Thus, the city of Charleston remained a place where stories were told with purpose, where wisdom was passed down from generation to generation, and where each person learned to value authenticity above all. Vivian, with her experience and kindness, continued to guide those who sought answers, helping them to find their own truths through the stories she told. If this story touched your heart and you believe in the importance of being authentic in your relationships, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Together, we will continue exploring the many facets of relationships and self-discovery. Until next time.